Let's get started. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. As Islamic State militants continue their advance across much of Iraq's north and west, the United Nations has declared the humanitarian crisis there to be at the highest level. The declaration triggers additional aid for Iraq, described by one UN official as a humanitarian catastrophe. ISIS' lightning advance has driven hundreds of thousands of Iraqis' religious minorities from their homes since June and prompted the U.S. to launch aid operations and airstrikes. The UN will provide increased support for some 400,000 Iraqis, Christians and others who have fled to the Turkish territories or Kurdish territories. A total of 1.5 million people have been displaced by the Islamist State surge. Thousands of Christians and Yazidis have been executed by the jihadists since June. Meanwhile, the Vatican is changing its tune, calling for international action to stop the Islamic State militants. This past week, Pope Francis sent a letter to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, condemning the persecution underway in the country. The Pope asked for swift and decisive action to stop the humanitarian disaster. Unlike Syria last year, where the Pope pleaded against what appeared to be the imminent military intervention by the U.S. and others, the Holy See this time is supporting U.S. intervention in Iraq. Ambassador to the United Nations, Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, said the Vatican supports U.S. airstrikes aimed at halting the advance of ISIS militants. He called for intervention now before it's too late, further acknowledging that military action might be necessary. Meanwhile, inside Iraq, a big political transition is underway. Thursday night, Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki announced that he is stepping down from his post after 8 years in power. He's supporting his rival, Shiite politician Haider al-Abadi, who is charged with building a new government. More on Iraq in our next segment. And Pope Francis began his 5-day apostolic visit to Korea on Thursday, calling for renewed efforts to forge peace on the war-divided Korean peninsula. In his first speech, the Pope told South Korea's president and government officials that peace requires forgiveness, cooperation, and mutual respect. He said diplomacy must be encouraged so that listening and dialogue can replace mutual recriminations, fruitless criticisms, and displays of force. For its part, North Korea saluted the papal visit by launching 5 test-fire missiles into the sea. Also earlier this week, Pyongyang turned down a South Korea invitation that North Korean Catholics attend Mass with Pope Francis. One other geopolitical note, Beijing granted permission for the Holy Father's plane to fly through China on its way to Korea. This is progress in the relations between the communist regime and the Vatican. In 1995, China refused passage to Pope John Paul II's plane on his way to the Philippines. Beijing broke off diplomatic relations with the Holy See in 1951. And be sure to tune in to EWTN for live coverage of Pope Francis in Korea. I'll be anchoring throughout the visit. Go to EWTN.com for times and details. Back in the U.S., Virginia could very soon be the latest state to recognize same-sex marriage. This after the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals decided on Wednesday to not delay its ruling, striking down the Commonwealth's law defining marriage as the union between one man and one woman. Unless the U.S. Supreme Court issues an emergency stay, as requested by Prince William County, same-sex marriages will begin on August the 20th. Chief Justice John Roberts will consider the request. We'll keep you posted. And the Vatican announced this past week that Pope Francis has reinstated the priestly faculties of Sandinista priest Father Miguel de Escoto Brockman. The Maryknoll priest was also Nicaragua's foreign minister under the Sandinista government. Pope John Paul II suspended him in 1985 as part of a larger crackdown on the political activities of liberation theology advocates. The leftist Sandinistas had led the violent overthrow of that country's dictator in the late 70s and remained at war with the Contras during the 1980s. Father D'Ascolto recently wrote to Pope Francis asking to be allowed to celebrate Mass before dying. Father D'Ascolto has made no public statement or apology for his actions leading to his suspension. Managua's Cardinal Archbishop Leopoldo Brenes was curiously agnostic about the matter. He told a Nicaraguan daily that the reinstatement of Father D'Ascolto was a Vatican decision. "I can hardly comment since I was not here when he was suspended, and I barely know him," the Cardinal said. More details are emerging following Robin Williams' tragic suicide this week. In addition to his decade-long battle with depression and substance abuse, the Oscar-winning comedic giant was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. On Thursday, Williams' widow revealed in a statement that his sobriety was in check, but that he was battling depression and anxiety stemming from the Parkinson's diagnosis. Robin Williams was 63. The laughter and joy he brought millions will surely be missed. More about Robin Williams' troubling death later in the show. Also passing away this week, a legendary star of stage and screen that risked being overshadowed by Williams' passing. Lauren Bacall, whose distinctive voice and arresting looks made her a star at 19, died Tuesday at age 89 at a New York City hospital. Betty Bacall, as her friends called her, starred in 30 films, from To Have and Have Not to her co-star and later husband Humphrey Bogart, to The Shootist with John Wayne. She also won 2 Tony Awards for her Broadway turns in the musicals Applause and The Woman of the Year. Bacall was also a National Book Award-winning author. I'll never forget what Miss Bacall taught me about book promotion. About 20 years ago, at a Pentagon City Mall bookstore, Bacall entered the store with a small entourage, and she asked the book clerk where her new memoir was located. Sweeping past me, she gathered multiple copies in her arms, and then she proceeded in grand style to replace all the books in the window with her own. "I have a new book, dear," Bacall told the stunned salespeople, flinging all the other books aside. "Readers need to know about it. You too," she said. And with that, she shoved one of her books in my hands, which I asked her to sign. And she did. That's how you sell books. She was a grande dame and the last of a vanishing breed of Hollywood stars. May Lauren Bacall rest in peace. And finally, it was 70 years ago, this August 15th, when another great lady, a vivacious, wounded girl from a broken home in Canton, Ohio, took a step that would change the course of church history and alter the direction of millions of lives. 21-year-old Rita Rizzo joined the Poor Clares of Perpetual Adoration of Cleveland 70 years ago this week. She soon became Sister Mary Angelica. The rest of the story you should know, and if you don't, find the biography. Dear Reverend Mother Angelica, we love you. This solemnity of the Assumption is also the 50th anniversary of Mother's first vocation in Birmingham. Sister Mary Regina is celebrating her 5 decades of religious life on the same day as her foundress. We salute Mother Angelica and Sister Regina on this special occasion and wish them both a happy anniversary and many, many more.